All right. Berlin, second half. Well, so after we decided to invite an actual German to come with us, one of the first things he did was show us a gorgeous neighborhood.
Yeah.
With a lot of vegans. So basically, but really, one of the things that I really liked about it, the route that he took us on, was that we got to see a library.
Oh yeah.
And that library was so super cool. Um, it was it was definitely 20th century architecture, so it was right up your alley.
Yeah.
But it was also right next to a park. And it was almost like the library was kind of in its own little island. Like it wasn't necessarily surrounded by stores, but it had a park next to it.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, wow, I really like it. And it had archives in one section, and it had a library in another section, and it had studying areas in a section. So it was almost like you got access to a university level library without actually having to go to university, which is really comfortable because in the States, we pretty much, like, you can go to public university libraries, but like it's a little bit of an effort to get into private universities. And I have learned the hard way that I am not allowed to go into private Mexican universities without ID and the offering of my hypothetical firstborn and everything to get into it. So this was a really nice library. And then, and I was just enjoying the walk. Uh, the weather was actually a lot warmer. Like, I was in a long sleeve t-shirt. Uh, your cousin was in a long sleeve t-shirt. I think you were in a long, like, we were not wearing the heavy jackets that we thought we would need.
Yeah.
In October.
Yeah.
And for people who are like, well, why would you need heavy jackets in October? If you have lived anywhere in the northeast of the United States, you know that cold just comes when it wants to. Like, there is no schedule of when cold comes, but we were really comfortable with not nearly a lot of layers. And your cousin was actually really concerned about that because that was evidence of climate change, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I like the library too, and then we went to a neighborhood where it's his favorite neighborhood to go with my cousin, with his wife, my cousin, because he's my political cousin, and it was
That's in-laws for all you folks from the States.
yeah, it was a street filled with cafes and bazaar shops and
Vegans.
vegans, and that to me wasn't that strange. To me it was what you normally expect when you are in a popular city, in a touristic city. You always find that neighborhood that appeals to the hipster uh, demographic. Yeah. So it wasn't my favorite place to be because uh, without money, then what's the point? And yes, it was pretty, but we didn't want to, or we weren't. It wasn't in our plans to spend money that way.
Not really, because basically, I mean, again, that's why we got places where we could cook.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a public space, but one of those public spaces that feel uh that make you feel poor.
Yeah. Where it's stressful to be outside because you're constantly reminded you didn't spend any money. And before we go deep into the Holocaust Museum, I just want to point out that your cousin not only took us to that museum, but he took us down an entire street of museums. And one of the things that he said was so poignant, which is we make all these museums so that we never forget history. And then the next morning, we enact policy that demonstrates that we've completely forgotten uh, policy and we've completely forgotten how things hurt.
What do you mean?
Well, it's like we come up with an idea to say, all right, we will never forget how not having diverse opinions uh, basically keeps everything single minded, and then we devolve into these negative government patterns. But then he told us like the number of parties that have been represented in the government has been fewer and fewer. Like it went from like 5, and he's like, yeah, now it's like 3. So it's like, people are not really paying attention to the fact that you cannot have everything the same.
I thought that you meant, or I thought that you wanted to talk about the point that uh, the Holocaust Museum and all of those.
Oh, I was gonna go back to that because that's a long one.
Yeah,
Because
it's
it
a
is
long one.
because it's not nearly the only museum dedicated to the Holocaust in Germany.
Yeah, no,
Like,
no, 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 or in Europe or in the world.
jeez, no, and it's like because it's like there's not just one Holocaust museum that we were gonna go see because it was on your list
Yeah,
of 20th century architecture, but then there was another one that was made of pillars of stone, and then you and I found ourselves caught in another one on our last day that you couldn't even get out of for about 2 hours.
yeah. Um, that Holocaust Museum is by Daniel Libeskind. Is a very famous architect,
And
and
that's the main one
yeah,
that people
and
remember.
he is the responsible architect also for the not all of it, but uh, a lot of the concept behind the 9/11 memorial in New York. Uh, he's a very well known architect for his capacity to uh, conceptualize and dates and events and into geometric forms or a lot of concept behind the design, and every form or every space has a reason, and all of the reasons are very well uh, they have a very interesting reason to be there, and so it I think the entrance is on the side on another building.
Yes. And that was intentional
Yeah.
because of when the Holocaust began.
Yeah. We already. I don't know if it was a good idea or a bad idea, but we had seen a documentary about this museum back in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, it felt we already knew where the entrance was. So we saw the building from outside, but I didn't record it because I had thought that I will have more time. But my cousin had uh, was walking with a very fast pace.
They are very athletic. Your cousins.
Yeah,
Fabulous shape.
yeah. And so, and when I finally got the GoPro, and I asked, "Can I record inside?" and they told me, "Yeah," but just when we were going downstairs, I was asked to turn off the camera, so I didn't record anything in the inside, and it's a very interesting museum, beautiful museum, uh, very disorienting, but that's also on purpose, and it has a lot of information. Uh, it's super long, uh, but I I wasn't having it. It was a very strange time to visit that museum
It really is.
in the midst of a genocide. Let's call it for what it is.
It took a year to call it genocide.
Mm-hmm.
They're finally calling it a genocide. What's happening in Gaza? Now you see, for me, and you're a lot nicer than I am. I'm actually really glad that we saw that documentary, because for me, it became more of a remembering
Mm-hmm.
the documentary and actually seeing the concepts put into real life. But the United States is founded on genocide. Like, that's all we did. It's that's all that happened. It was come over and murder indigenous people. It was bring over. It was steal and bring over to murder and rape African people, and it was entice and murder Asian people. That is the United States history. But we don't have all these museums to all those genocides. And the reason why we don't is because the word genocide did not exist until the 1940s. It was posited by uh, Ralph Lemkin, who is a Polish author. And the reason why that matters is because genocide means killing of people. So when you posit that only the Nazi Holocaust was a genocide, without mentioning, like I said, the foundations of the United States, then that is disingenuous to me. And I think it's one of the reasons why it took a year to say, yeah, no, they're murdering Palestinians. And so for me, it was like, but you're supposed to feel all this guilt over all of this. But it's like, yes, but you don't feel any guilt over what happened elsewhere. You don't feel any guilt over the murders that happened with German expansionism. You don't feel any guilt over what happened in South Africa. You don't feel any guilt for any engagement with any of the wars that have happened. Because remember, the United States has been at war for 20 years. Yes, I know we're in Germany, but the reality is Germany is not a child, it's a country. And yes, that was a bad thing. That is not the only bad thing that has happened since then, any more than France stopped its influence after Nazism fell and they just became known as a country full of artists and garrets smoking and thinking deep things in coffee. I mean, to have this much attention devoted to one Holocaust, yes, Germany was responsible for it, but but yeah, like I said, I felt very strongly about it because, again, we decided that we weren't killing people until we were killing white people, which is also a statement made by Michel-Rolph Trouillot, the author of Silencing the Past.
Yeah, definitely. There's a museum in Mexico City called uh, Memory and Tolerance Museum, Museo de la Memoria y la Tolerancia, and it's a museum that when you get into it, it explains to you all most of the most famous genocides that have occurred uh, during recent history, with photos and timelines and
We saw it, but didn't go in, I think.
yeah. But that's only 10%, and then 90%. I mean, these are numbers. 90% of the rest of the museum focuses on the on the Holocaust, and
Which is bizarre because wasn't Mexico formed by genocide too?
exactly, and it doesn't talk about, it doesn't mention, or it doesn't focus on the genocide that the Spanish crown did in Mexico, and in basically all Latin America, for decades, for hundreds of years. So why why is there a museum like that in Mexico? I don't know. And why doesn't it uh, mentions the atrocities committed by the imperialism, by the Spanish Empire, uh, Spanish crown, uh, in 16th century. So I don't know. It doesn't seem to be, like you said, it doesn't seem to be important unless it's white people the victims.
And again, violence is violence. That nobody should excuse violence. Um, but then again, violence is violence, and nobody should excuse violence. Continuing to act as if all of these other things didn't happen. I mean, the 1968 Olympic Games were took place in Mexico after a massacre.
Yeah, committed by its own government towards students in Tlatelolco, and there is no museum on that. Um,
They
and
mentioned a little bit about it when we were in Monterrey
mm,
because there was like one thing that said, "Oh yeah, and this happened."
yeah, and in Tlatelolco, when we were there, yes, there was a memorial, uh, but I don't know.
Considering that Mexico is a country full of activism on multiple levels, that seems bizarre to me.
Yeah, but then again, those victims of genocide, not all of them have the resources to build or to hire Daniel Libeskind to make a museum to make everybody remember and feel guilty about uh, what they did.
Well, not only that, but it takes time to write the history. And you had an excellent point a few days ago where you were talking about how there was so much bureaucracy in Nazism
Mm-hmm.
that it makes it impossible not to have information.
Mm-hmm.
And what is interesting is that, yeah, bureaucracy does record it, but it takes a lot of time to get to comb through the information, because I'm a person who does timelines, and timelines where I do very innocuous search terms. And when you do timeline searches, well, you get a lot of results. And it takes hours and days and weeks to comb through all that information. And because people don't value combing through a lot of that information, like you said, a lot of marginalized people end up doing their own research for free and trying to get it out there, but everybody is so focused on the people who can afford to do a museum and the people who can afford to do documentaries on their museum. Uh, but again, it's like that is quote unquote one museum in a city that is full of museums. It literally has a museum street.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's impressive. It's super long. It's super. The museography, it's amazing. It's they they explain or they relate. They take you on a journey, and they explain to you the many ways, many uh, didactic,
Yeah, basically teaching.
yeah, ways, uh, many of the atrocities that were committed by the Nazi regime. Uh, so yeah, that was quite a museum. Uh, but I read some. It was very difficult for me to read on the timelines. Uh, the word Palestine many times.
Yes.
After, even before, the Second World War ended, you started seeing that the country of Palestine started playing a very important part, and but it seemed to me one-sided.
Yes.
And I remember there was one part of the museum that mentioned something about uh, people who want to convert to Judaism, and one of them, and so it was a question, like it was a text, and the text said something like uh, someone talking to a rabbi and asking him, I want to become a Jewish. I am studying the Torah, and and I won't stop until I learn it, and I can recite it standing on my head or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the rabbi goes and tells him, "Do you want learn the Torah, uh, that's easy as learning something very simple. Uh, do not do to others what you don't want uh,
Done to you.
done to you. Uh, that's the Torah, uh, simply put. And I thought, then explain to me one thing, like, then what the fuck is going on
Look, and
in Palestine? Like, so to me, it felt kind of inauthentic, and I know that what is going on in Israel, the genocide that Israel is committing right now, do not speak for
all Jewish people.
All Jewish people and the entire Jewish community. I know that. I know it's a political, it's religion being politicized, but
that doesn't change reality.
Yeah,
it really doesn't. And I'm saying that as somebody who is baptized in a nation where my state just approved Bible-based lesson planning for public schools. Literally, the First Amendment in the Constitution discusses a separation of church and state. So my issue with only recognizing the Jewish Holocaust is the fact that it's like, well, now wait a minute. So you're saying that if I have a Southern Baptist at the end of a memorial to the massacred Christians in Japan, that's acceptable? That I should have... It's like, all right, well, you've seen the atrocities that happen. Now, would you like to come to Jesus? Like, that doesn't seem logical. That doesn't seem... And while humanity is more than logic, I think it speaks to the fact that, no, you cannot simply excuse the evils that are done because you're rooting for your team. Like, that's actually the problem that you have in struggling democracies. You have a bunch of people basically saying, oh, but this is my idea, so my idea is good. Again, back to that whole understanding that everybody does not have the same idea, and that is acceptable. And so, see, like I said, I remember being really angry when I saw that museum. But that isn't even the longest museum experience that we had while we were in Berlin. But after that, what I really loved was Alexanderplatz, and Platz is German for plaza. So Alexanderplatz is Alexander Plaza, and it was basically in the divided area between communist and democratic Berlin. And quite frankly, it was one of my favorite parts.
It was amazing.
It was like, we went back. I love that area so much.
It made me remember a lot of a movie I watched some time ago, Goodbye Lenin. Have you watched it?
I have not. I'm totally down.
It's great, and like seeing Soviet architecture, like right there and then, to me it was a dream come true.
And it was beautiful. Like people think, oh, well, all communism, it's all about the same, and it's like, it depends on your architect. So, because like I said, we went back and I enjoyed the pictures that I took the first time, and I enjoyed the pictures that I came back to take. But it's
Yeah.
yeah.
After the mixed feelings that arose in the Jewish Museum, we I needed a coffee.
Yes.
I needed a strong coffee, so we went to, like you said, to Alexanderplatz, and we saw the atomic clock, we saw the the
Oh, the spear.
the huge sphere tower. The Alexanderplatz is huge. It's amazing.
And everybody's there.
Yeah.
And it's got bus rapid transit, it's got trains, it's got buses, it's got cars, it's got pedestrians. The propaganda boulevard is there, and it's basically perpendicular to the propaganda boulevard in the Republic area. So, like I said, it was really one of my that alone is almost enough to make me want to go back to Berlin.
Yeah.
I really liked it. That and all the black people. I am not interesting at all in Berlin. I loved that, and it was really great.
Yeah. Seeing, I saw a lot of, I understood why Mexican architecture in the 50s, it was or is the way it was, uh, because Mexico had a lot of influence from Russia, from Russian intellectuals, and from probably communist ideas during the presidency of Lázaro Cárdenas, and even Mexico even hosted Trotsky.
That's right. You
Yeah.
sure did. Didn't he meet Frida Kahlo?
Yeah. He was invited by Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera, and he was eventually killed in Mexico. But I understood a lot of why the Mexican muralists like Siqueiros, Orozco, and Rivera. I saw
Who's Cicadas?
David Alfaro Siqueiros is another one of the three
greats.
three great muralists, and I understood why their murals are the way they are because of we saw a building that had a very similar mural to the Diego Rivera's murals that portrayed an image of work and science and study and progress and from the cropping fields to the use of the nuclear energy. Murals used to the point of murals used to, especially in Mexico, the purpose of them was to, since Mexico had and still has a great index of analphabetism, a way that in which the government could indoctrinate its population was by murals.
Yeah.
And so
which is fascinating because whenever I think of murals, I think exactly the opposite. I think, oh, that's what rebels do, and y'all are like, no.
But yeah, it was fantastic. That side of Berlin, it was fantastic, definitely.
And so then we saw the Mills van der Rohe.
Oh yeah, and the Philharmonic.
and the Philharmonic.
We saw the we we went to we walked all along the propaganda
Propaganda Boulevard.
boulevard.
Well, the Democratic
Yeah,
Propaganda Boulevard, because we did not have time to walk down the communist Propaganda Boulevard, and it makes me sad
yeah,
because like I said, I both sides in one place. Arg.
yeah. But we got to see the rally or parade of the many of these cars, these small cars called Traban, a car made by the Soviet, the communist
And it is
regime.
adorable.
Yeah, it's a tiny, teeny, tiny car, very noisy, very small, but very funny, and it's kind of like the car that Mr. Bean used to drive, that Mini Cooper,
Like,
but no, it was a sight to see, and then when we got to Potsdamer Platz before getting to the Philharmonic, we saw the architecture that was made in the late 80s
mm-mm.
on top of the what was left of Berlin and in that part, and it was like the capitalist architecture. I mean, these skyscrapers without a soul, these fancy buildings by corporations, and my cousin thought that I will be interested in that because of their complexity and their
People
and
love to get the assignment wrong with you. Like, that's what I find fascinating. It's like they're like, "You like this, right?"
yeah, it's like you're an architect, so you like skyscrapers, no? And I was like, oh my god, but those skyscrapers lack a soul. Like you cannot get inside. They are public, some of them, but they are not because you have to be spending money. Uh, I don't know. The Sony building was interesting, but the plaza that it had. Uh, but I wasn't as impressed as when I saw the Philharmonic in the Neue National Gallery by Mies van der Rohe.
Like even the plaza wasn't as exciting as the Alexanderplatz.
Yeah,
I feel like I could sit in Alexanderplatz all day
for hours,
and
definitely.
I would not get bored. I
Yeah,
feel like unless I had 2,000 euros, because that was really what the architecture in Potsdamer Platz was all about. It was like buy this, buy this, buy this, and you're back to being outside
yeah,
and feeling poor.
yeah. While as in Alexanderplatz, you saw performances you saw a
Street
performance from a
artists.
street artist. Uh, you could engage with on house people. Even uh, you could even if you could buy anything, it was memorabilia of communism by a guy who was selling communist
The
propaganda,
hats.
like with and the hats and those very famous hats that one associates to Russia, and
But with German logos on
oh
them.
yeah, with the flag of the Democratic Republic. Was it that was a DCR, right? The no, the DRC.
I am not going to lie to you. I have not studied enough of German history to know what the communist section of
Uh-huh,
Berlin was called. But
uh-huh.
yeah, it is like uh,
Democratic Republic. No, so
Soviet Republic.
no, it was the east side was the I think that one
That was a communist.
yeah, that one was the I think the the I
Look at
forgot. I will look.
look at this Mexican showing off just how well he is versed
Democratic
in international
Democratic
history.
Republic of Germany, I think.
Like again, I am from the United States. The extent of our history is we saved everybody in World War II and slavery was bad. That's all. That's our history class. But no, and it was also interesting to see the communist side because communism fell when I was a little girl, and it's the same age, and it fell, I think, the same year as the savings and loan crisis in the United States. So yeah, the last 40 years have been fascinating. And being 43 is, and getting into history, like that's, I'm like, wow. So yeah, so then to go to West Berlin and be like, would you like to spend all of your life savings just so that you can feel like you belong here? Like
Yeah.
that was disappointing.
Yeah, there were a few. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
There were a few art installations like this, kind of like a huge trumpet in which you could speak on one end and other people could hear you on the other end, but it didn't even work.
Right.
Art felt synthetic, while Alexanderplatz felt alive. Like, wow, Russia did know how to make a plaza that worked. And
Well, it was supposed to appeal to the masses, so
yeah,
that does make sense.
yeah, no, it was lovely. It was a lovely lesson on public space, Alexanderplatz.
But when we got to the symphony and the gallery that we saw in near Potsdamer Platz, that made it worth it to go over there, because the people watching is great. Once you kind of separate yourself from consume everything and be a capitalist area, it's actually very comfortable and it's lovely. And it's just lovely to look at. And again, the temperature was great because it was fall, so it wasn't hot and it wasn't freezing. So no, that was, even waiting for you to get pictures of that, I was very, very pleased to be there.
That was that space in that building, the Philharmonic, was amazing. Yeah, and next to the Neue National Gallery. Going to the for me, going to the Neue National Gallery was a to me was super important because Mies van der Rohe, along with Le Corbusier, is like going to the source.
Yeah.
And going to see the masters, and Neue National Gallery was, according to a documentary about it that I watched, it was Germany's way of asking Mies, or saying Mies sorry for basically pushing you out during the Nazi era, because during the Nazi period, a lot of intellectuals and artists and geniuses fled Germany because of what was going on, and Hitler closed the Bauhaus, and so Mies van der Rohe ended up in the United States, in Chicago, and there he did most of his masterpieces in Northeast United States. But
No, that's central.
oh,
Like it's like, and it's, which is funny because Chicago and Austin are actually in the same time zone.
interesting.
Right.
He did the Seagram Building in New York. That's another one of his masterpieces, and And basically, the Noi National Gallery looks like if you took the Seagram building, if you took only one story of it and you sliced it and you kept the plaza, and it's basically the first two stories or the first story of the Seagram building, also along with the plaza.
But you also go underground.
And you also go on the ground, and on the ground, the gallery is underground actually. The building that you see on top is just like the cherry on top of the cake, but there's a whole gallery on the ground with a garden in the back, also on the ground. Uh, that I didn't get to see because I I didn't have the money to go to the not even not I didn't have the money nor the time to go around it, but that was okay. That'll be for next time.
Because, no, really, that is another space that you can be in. And I
Yeah.
was in without messing with anybody, and you could just kind of enjoy the space and go home. Like it was a very enjoyable space for even somebody who's not an architect.
Yeah, there were even I liked that there were a group of teenagers playing soccer in on top of the plaza,
And
uh,
skateboarding.
and skateboarding, and nobody was harassing them. Nobody was telling them skateboarding is not allowed. Like they were having a great time, and I even recorded them with my camera because I enjoyed the use of that public space in that way.
And there was a lot of seating too.
Yeah,
Like one of the biggest challenges that we discovered on this journey is that people don't like to let you sit anywhere. They want you to either pay money to sit or they want you to leave.
yeah,
And so being able to like very good use of the surrounding walls of it too. So like I said, it was a very comfortable space to be.
yeah.
And so
The
yeah.
scale of a building, it's supposed to resemble a classic temple, like a Roman temple, but in a contemporary Roman temple, with its columns, it basically the front of a building, the stairs, so that you climb up because it's supposed to be a sacred space.
Mm-hmm.
So it did feel
When you
like a
put it that
sacred
way,
contemporary temple.
when you put it that way, having studied Latin for 6.5 years, that is exactly what it looks like.
Hmm.
Like literally from the steps to it to the basically the symmetrical space having more layers than people who are outsiders can even see.
Yeah,
So yes, nailed it.
like a transparent temple. Yeah. Uh, no, it was amazing, and we don't do architecture like that anymore. We even another place that we didn't mention was the Memorial for the Murdered Jews in Berlin by Peter Eisenman. Uh, this plaza, huge plaza that is basically filled with concrete blocks, extruded concrete blocks in different heights, and
And we actually went back to that one too. Like the
yeah,
same day that we went to the gallery, I was like, "Hey, let's go there." And you got a great half an hour when the sun was still up.
yeah, it was interesting because you can lose yourself inside of that maze of extruded concrete blocks. It was shocking to me to see that some of those concrete blocks are cracking, uh, and they are held by these steel rods or steel uh, basically grabs.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, that was weird to me to see that it was in such a precarious conditions, some of
Yeah.
them. And there was a text in one of the corners explaining the rules of the space.
That nobody was following, by
Nobody
the
was
way.
following them. It said no dogs, no running, no playing, no selfies, no this, not that,
And everybody,
yeah,
and it was like people would take a selfie in front of the rules with their dog while running. Like
yeah,
it was really kind of ridiculous.
yeah.
But
But when you were in the middle of when you were deep inside of the maze, there were moments in which you saw nobody,
yes,
and you heard nobody, even though that you were,
there were clearly other people there.
yeah, and suddenly somebody came by running or laughing, and so in a way I did feel more spiritual connection in a more solemn state. I experienced a more solemn state of mind
Hmm.
in that place than in the Jewish Museum.
Yeah.
I felt.
Well, no, there was also even a section of the Holocaust Museum that seemed to emulate
Yeah,
that.
this one, that one was first. This
Yes.
one was after that. Actually, here in Mexico, in Guadalajara, actually, there's actually a similar one too, but with not that much uh, budget.
Well, I mean, remember.
Yeah,
But so yeah, Germany is Berlin was, like I said, it is on my list of favorites. I was really
yeah,
really pleased to be there. Really sad to go. When we left, it was the longest Tuesday we had ever had in our lives because basically we left Berlin at midnight at 12:22. We were taking no other trains. But here's the thing: when you don't pay for a bed and you sleep on a train for hours, you do not get good sleep. And this is coming from somebody who has amazing sleep. I can sleep almost anywhere. This was, I never hit REM cycle. It was extremely difficult to relax. And then once we got off the train, then we went to the airport.
yeah,
And uh, because so the reason that we were on the train to get to the airport is because it is cheaper to fly from Frankfurt to Mexico than it is to fly from Berlin
yeah,
to Mexico. And that was the name of the game, figuring out what was less expensive. And so we took the train to Frankfurt. We were both very sad that we didn't actually get any time to spend in Frankfurt, but regardless, we went directly to the airport. And by the way, the cities are very territorial in Germany too. Frankfurt is not Berlin, is not Munich.
yeah,
And so you can't get the same souvenirs, you can't get the same food, you can't.
yeah.
And so that was that was an interesting uh, experience. And then we got to be on an 11-hour flight
Yeah.
to Cancun.
But one thing that seemed odd to me is that my cousin kept complaining about uh, how buses weren't as regular, trains weren't as regular either, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Look,
Like,
anybody who whines about a late train in Berlin, Germany. I will give them a week, 1 week in Austin, Texas, and I want them to come back to me after that week. They will be begging to have their late trains within 48 hours.
I give them an hour in car-centric Guadalajara.
Jeez.
No, to me it was like, are you kidding me? And he was like, yeah, in Munich it's not like that. Munich is all everything is on the clock, and so even in Germany, a country that is famous for being very strict and on its systems, and it relies on systems working like a Swiss watch.
Oh no, it's like a German clock.
Yeah, and but, but also they have different levels depending on the city. So apparently, Munich works like a German watch, and Berlin is a mess, supposedly.
Which, like I said, and to me that just sounds like territorialism between the cities. It's just like, nah, you just look. If you want to go to Munich, go to Munich. Don't compare Berlin, because quite frankly, I'm sure that they all have their merits and flaws.
Yeah.
But Berlin made me want to stay in Germany.
Me too.
Berlin is actually the only city that made me think, wow, I'm actually sad that I can't go anywhere else here.
Yeah.
And so
definitely.
So yeah. But to conclude our scouting trip with the place that we would really want to go, I thought that was actually highly poetic. And yes, it was really nice seeing your cousin, but Berlin is the only place that I would go there without them. Like, I could easily, this is our years of material. I could never get bored. And more importantly, it's like, I would love to research the Black experience in Germany, because there's only one movie that I can think of that talks about the Black experience in Germany, and it's called Where Hands Touch, and it's about a Black woman who has romance with a Nazi soldier. They were the same age, because remember, 17 meant something different in the 1940s. And at the end of the movie, they talk about the Black Germans. And so like I said, that alone makes me interested, especially when you consider all of the different governments that Germany went through.
You mentioned Germany was a monarchy, a republic,
Communist, an empire.
Okay.
Because it was an imperial, and socialist. Because say what you will about the Nazis, that is what they considered themselves, to be socialists.
Yeah.
So that's 6 governments. So no, that would be really interesting. And it's also a dead empire. And by dead empire, I mean basically the only place that they're in charge of is Germany. So especially coming from a dying empire myself, that makes it all the more fascinating. But no, I think seeing now, the empires that we've discussed on this have all been white-centric empires. This could have just as easily been about Asian empires, because there's a lot of imperialism throughout Asia, a lot of dead imperialism throughout Asia, and a lot of dead imperialism throughout Central and South America and throughout Africa. There is like the concept of an empire is fascinating, which is why we actually talked about why people choose empires on one of our episodes. But the reality is that if you choose an empire and if you give in to the empire, then you need to know that you have a limited amount of stability. It will never last indefinitely. And one of the things that was actually interesting about all the history that I've seen is that it all talks about the leaders. And to me, I think that is actually worthless. Why? Because it is more important to control the masses than it is to have a decent leader. And so seeing how the masses to respond to control should be a lot more interesting, and that should be something that's discussed more when you talk about imperialism, because another interesting ideology is all these nations' middle classes. Like, the reason why the baby boomer generation is so intriguing, regardless of what continent, is because they are the middle class.
Yeah.
Like, and there's a reason for them to be middle class everywhere on the continent. And wait, what was it in Mexico again? It was the nationalized oil, right?
Yeah, it was one of the many reasons. Yeah, but that was an important one.
And so it's like when you had circumstances like that, well, then of course, yeah, a lot of people get houses, a lot of people get decent education. It's a lot of people could depend on financial stability,
Yeah.
but yeah. So yeah, boomers all over the world. That would be something.
Yeah.
But no, thank all of y'all for sticking with us through this journey. Like I said, I never expected to be shifting homes once a week, every week for
Yeah.
6 weeks. I have a lot more respect for unhoused people who deal with programs that will only house them for a week.
Yeah. It's not good for the morale. It's very exhausting, and it's very, it keeps you traveling uh, lightweight.
Yeah.
It makes you rethink of, do I really need this? It makes you get rid of a lot of things, and you start being more
You definitely consume a lot less.
yeah.
Because, like I said, we didn't get souvenirs on this trip because we don't buy a lot of crap and we don't hang around a bunch of people who buy a lot of crap. So yes, we definitely saw the pros and cons of imperialism, but like I said, this was something that I was very pleased to do, and I think that it should be more incumbent upon people to think less about how to stay in one spot and consume a lot, but to actually go see. I don't think everybody ought to be a travel blogger. I don't even really believe in that. But I think being able to see why decisions matter, that that is a worthwhile experience. And like I said, the going to look for architectural sites instead of going to look for touristy sites, that just changed everything. And it makes you a lot less enamored with the story that somebody is selling you, than actually experiencing the place itself.
Definitely. It's a lot of fun doing that. A lot of learning.
Yes. All right. Well, that is all we have to say about our chasing dying empires. And again, we thank you for your attention and look forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your patience with my English.
Look, people who can speak 2 and 3 languages don't get to apologize for the way they speak English. No, absolutely not. All right, seriously. Thanks, y'all, and bye.
Bye.